Hello, I am Randy Horton, and this is the Don't Talk Right podcast. And today I'm talking to Maggie Hall. She's a poet, songwriter, artist from Australia. And today we'll just be talking a little bit about her work. Good to see you, Maggie.
Good to see you, Randy. Yep.
So why don't we start? You just talk a little bit about your background and the work you've done so far.
Yeah, that's such a big loaded question that requires an even bigger answer, and so I guess just keeping it short, um, I have been studying music and art since, well, I guess early school, specifically from when I lived in Canada, going to school, a School of the Arts, and then from Canada coming to Australia and going into again another School of the Arts and continue on from there. And I've been dancing since well, I was dancing since I was 5. So pretty much I've been involved in the arts, music, drama, dance for most of my life. To elaborate on that, um, I don't think I'll go into that rabbit hole. Oh, there's my alarm to wake up. Yeah, so I'll just leave that there.
So I
Pretty
was
much it's been my life. Mm.
Yeah, since we're mostly talking about writing, how did your writing sort of weave into your overall artistic life?
Yeah, once again, age of 6, I had a seizure, and that pretty much changed the trajectory of the rest of my life and my family's. Um, so being on some pretty strong medication back in the day, it was, I guess, I have no memory of it, but it would have been difficult for me in the classroom because I learnt like any other child. There was no difference. But supposedly and historically, I was quite good at writing, and the teachers I had were all, always quite impressed with my writing and always backed me up and would say to my parents, she's got a gift, or she's really good at this, you should support it. And so once again, um, looking at anything outside of the arts, um, it was my writing that stood out. And so just like with all of the artistic endeavors that I would focus on during my learning, alongside that would be my writing.
So in those early days, were you writing poetry, stories, or what
I
kind of?
couldn't say. I certainly don't have a collection of my works from when I was young, except for those first few that the parents always keep. And I don't know if you'd consider that to really be any sort of relevant writing. Um, the scary long-necked giraffe and the story about how he came into existence is quite interesting. um, yeah, I couldn't say, as like I said, I don't have anything that I could read. And certainly my parents, specifically my mother, didn't keep anything because, like a lot of parents who have a child or children with back, they would say disabilities, or they'd say that there's something wrong with your child, or um, and I know that in my case, that's all pretty much wiped out because I don't think it's something that my mother in particular really wanted to focus on, and I don't think from the interviews I've recorded with my father, I think he was mostly just quite angry at a lot of things that happened. So I never really got anything from him, but for the recordings that I took for the book that I was writing and research. Um, so no, I couldn't tell you, but I do know that the Performing Arts School in Canada, I really really loved the choir work or the singing work, group singing work that we did. And I do still have a lot of the sheet music from then, which is quite wonderful. Um, and I do have memories from then.
So, as you got
That's
older,
sorry.
when do you remember sort of expressing yourself through your writing? And and because now I know you sort of combine your writing with visual arts and with video and music. How did all of that evolve?
Hmm. Well, I couldn't say how it evolved, but certainly if you're looking at the video side of it, my only memories come from videos and photographs of when I was a child. So again, growing up, um, for me, that was my life, and it was all contained within a snapshot or a short video. And being very visual and cerebral, um, I always found myself drawn to film
Mm,
and loving music and movement. It just seemed the natural thing to move into, I guess, as I grew up and learnt how to create and work in certain areas. And again, it's very difficult to talk about something that if you're talking about mixing it all together with technology changing so rapidly over the years.
mm,
Again, for example, when I was younger, there was no way I could work in film because I didn't have a there was a day where you had to have money to do film
mhm,
to start off with, so you couldn't make film unless you had the money, um, and you had the people you could do it with. But then, of course, with technology and all of the changes, slowly and eventually, you were able to do it yourself once you learned how to do it, um, and use the technology. And then quite quickly, I guess I would say maybe within a 3 to 4 year gap, you might spend a few $1,000s on something that would then enable you to edit film and music and everything. And then within 4 years, you're able to do it on your phone,
right.
or you're able to do it much easier. So I would just say in general, in this time, this day and age, it's the most fantastic place and time to be living for anybody who has just a little minute amount of um, I don't know, creativity, or has a mind where they want to create something specifically. It's so easy now for anyone to do it that it's a really incredible moment in time, because my memory is when film all started. I learned how to make a box camera, a pinhole camera, and then going through the years, as technology changed, I was moving with that. Whereas now technology is what it is, and it's overlapped so many times that anything is possible. As far as being an artist, I would say I've probably been an artist my whole life. The perfect storm of all the different things um, in my life put me into that place, and I certainly couldn't point out a moment or a time in particular, because to me it's just my life.
Right. I think I'm interested when I listen to you talking about it. You have a writing life and a music life and an art life and a film life. And I think um, I'm curious, how did you incorporate your art in your film, or the movement in film, or music and words, or how did those things come? Because they're not really separate for you, are they? I mean, you kind of use one with the along with the other, I think.
Yeah, well, I don't personally. I know if you're studying film, well, the different elements, etc., they will say you have to make a choice. What are you best at? Are you an editor? Are you a sound person? Are you? Um, I don't see the difference. I see it all as the one thing. If I'm looking at film, then I would say the most important part of film is sound. Um, then after sound would have to be editing, and then after editing would have to be chemistry. So the most important thing is sound, because when you're watching something or if you're experiencing something, the sound is what connects immediately to your emotions. So if you want to draw someone in, that's the most important thing. You could have a brilliant film, but the sound's wrong. No one's going to connect to it.
True.
May even just turn it off. And then after that, the editing, of course, because the edit is the blink. So we're talking and you just blinked just then, right? And again, so when you blink, when your eyes close, you're cutting that out of your reel. So you're cutting it when you're blinking.
Mhm.
It's a fascinating study, actually. If you want to know if someone's being honest or whatever, you can go right into it, watching their face and when they blink and how they. But the blink is the edit.
Right.
Um, and I can't remember why I even mentioned that, so you might have to prompt me. Sorry.
I was wondering, did you write scripts for your films?
Oh, I hate writing scripts. I
So,
just not that I hate it. I don't like writing scripts. I just write without. I don't like being told or being given a thing. Okay, now write a script for this, or
mhm,
write something along these lines. That's all. That's all fine and good if you're, say, doing some poetry, or if someone wants you to write something uh, um, that okay, we want people to feel sad or happy or angry, or we want them to cry, and can you write something that will allow that to happen? Well, okay, I'll do that, but I don't like doing that. When I write in the moment, in a stream of consciousness. I write as it comes through my mind. I write like a feeling that translates into words. And it's something that happens in the moment. So if someone says to me, can you write me something about this in this way that looks like that? That is a script. And I just don't feel comfortable doing that. I could do it, but it would, for me, take away the creation of it or the imagination of it, and it would become a job.
so what is the
So what is the
process? Do you write stuff down, or do you just turn on a recorder and kind of improvise as you go, or how do you approach it?
Yeah, so I'll have get a piece of paper and a pen, and if something comes into my mind, I'll grab the paper and pen and I'll jot it down. In a lot of cases, I have my phone, and on my phone, the note section, and I have thousands upon thousands of notes.
Mhm.
And those notes, I don't dictate them, I'll type them in. And I do a lot of workshops, and in the workshops, of course, I do use my pen and paper and very quickly write down everything. And in a break or in a moment um, where I'm not doing that, I will actually voice record what I've written into my notes. Again, the technology allows us to do that now, which is incredible. So instead of having to type it all up, within a minute and a half, you've got down about 5 pages of work by doing it that way. So that's what I do, and that's how I do it. And and then it's in my notes. And if I need to do something, or someone says, I'd like this, or can you do this, I'll refer back to my notes, and I will always find something that fits in. So I do that as opposed to writing something from a prompt. I'll already have it written, if you know what I mean. It'll
Right.
already be written, and I just need to refer back to it. Mm.
So do you what do you do with your stuff that's written? I mean, we heard one thing you do, but do you publish in magazines and books? You turn it into film? You turn it into
Mm.
songs? What happens after you've got those words down?
Yeah, so I've got quite a few films, um, different types of film. I have, well, I don't know if you call them songs. I don't call them songs. I actually don't like the term song. It's just strange. Um, a written piece that can be read or sung depending on how you um, perform it.
Mhm.
Um, Personally, everybody does what they like to do, and everyone has their preferences. Myself, um, I don't, I don't accept. I don't like getting paid. I don't like getting paid for writing, for reading. I don't like getting paid for my poetry in particular, because it changes everything for me. Um, I've worked in nearly every type of job, and I've had a lot of experience in a lot of different areas. But the things that I've enjoyed the most are the things that I've done through volunteer work, because it's a passion as opposed to a job, and it affects, certainly affects how you experience something or feel about something. You don't have that pressure of, well, I'm getting paid, so I have to make that person happy, and if they're not happy, they're going to be disappointed, or they're going to say something, or they're going to tell me it's not what they want. But if I'm not getting paid, then really that doesn't affect me,
Mhm.
and I don't feel that pressure.
Mhm.
More than anything else, that's why. Not any religious reason, or no, it's just fairly simple, straightforward, the pressure. And it just takes away that the politics and that whole thing.
Just gives you freedom.
Um, yeah, and the other thing that um, I personally don't like is, I guess, um, I don't like meeting up my entrance, beefing up who I am and what I've done and what I'm able to do, and the um, the writing I've done, the photography I've done, the things I've had published, the things I'd like to have published. I personally don't like that, only because as a performer, I mean, it just depends on what you're doing, you know. But as a performer, that affects me.
Mhm.
Um, Someone talks about, oh, Maggie's done this and that, and she's blah blah blah, and 5 6 minutes later, oh, okay, Maggie, and you're already exhausted. You're already exhausted from hearing all of that, and then you've got to get you into a whole different space, because as a performer, you know what it's like. It's a space, it's an energy, it's a whole thing, and to have someone have to introduce you and explain you to an audience, when the whole idea is for the audience to experience you, you've destroyed you've destroyed for the audience their ability to just let go and feel, because they're already thinking about all these things they've been told about you. So when you're actually performing, they're not even going to be there, in that way. And of course, I only think that way because I can't say we're all the same, because we're not. But for myself, everything is about the experience and the feeling, and that's something that I don't resonate with. It's certainly something that I don't like with anybody else. If I'm watching,
Mhm.
I find that just it affects the whole experience. So because of that, of course, I don't like it for myself either. But I guess they're the only two things that I have a bit of an irk with. Um,
What's your favorite type of performance to do for people? What's the best way to connect with an audience then? Um,
oh
music,
yeah,
poetry, or dance, whatever.
yeah. Oh, sorry, Rand. I'll just quickly go back. And what I
Okay.
just spoke about, it runs through everything, specifically painting, and I did a lot of painting and a lot of exhibitions and such. And one of the things in the art world is you have to have your spiel, you have to have your CV with all of the different things. And when you have an artwork hanging up or up in a gallery, you've got to have that bit of white writing next to it that's almost as big as the painting itself saying what. And again, I don't like that at all, which doesn't make it easy when um, you're living in a world where there's certain structures in place and there's an expectation this is what you do, and it's the same thing with poetry, and that's what you do. And I guess in a lot of ways I go against the grain in a lot of the artistic fields,
Mhm.
and I'm quite stubborn. So if I don't feel something's right or I don't like it, I just don't do it. Sorry, so what was that last question? What?
So my last question was, let's say you're putting on the performance, you design it, by your specifications. How would you want to go out and engage with an audience? What would be your choice if you're designing it? Would you go out and speak to them or use some other kind of expression? What would your preferred method be?
As in say when you say performance, are we talking a live performance, a a film performance? I'm not.
Well, we were talking before, you were talking about being a performer and not wanting to sort of give the audience too much so that they were already locked in with certain ideas before
Mm,
you started to communicate with them. So I was asking, how would you want to communicate with them? So you could say film or live performance or whatever you like. I was just wondering if you designed your performance and how you could
mm.
engage with people, how would you approach that?
Yeah, okay. So say if there was an audience in front of me and there was a stage and it was dark and there was the light on the stage and a microphone, I'd walk out on to the microphone and I wouldn't even introduce myself. I'd just say I'm going to read you something. Going to read you something from this in this moment, and just start reading. And usually, intermittently within the reading, I'll come into song, break into sound, and that gets weaved into my readings. And during the performance or during that presentation, a lot of the time, what I'm doing isn't really the thing. It's more bouncing off the audience, because when you have an audience or a group of people watching you, you get an energy or a feeling, and it's different every time. And you might have people in the crowd with different colored tops or looking in a different way, and during that performance, you might refer to that in your reading or your song and just weave it in. So it's like a stand-up comic, I guess, but you're not making them laugh unless that's part of what you're doing. But in most cases, I mean, everyone's poetry is different, everyone's readings are different, performance is different. I tend to be a bit traditional and can get a bit deep with my words, and often what I write isn't straight forward in its meaning. There's a lot of different levels in it, so that the audience or the people watching or experiencing it can all take something from it. It's not just one meaning or one experience, it's many all in the one moment. And so every single person in that audience or every single person watching, whether it be face to face, in person, or virtual, every single person's going to take something away from it and feel something that will get them to think something. And often it can make people uncomfortable because I go into places that can um, can pull people out of a comfort zone, but not by saying things directly, just by being quite emotional in my presentation. And just like doing film, as I said, the most important thing is sound. And when you're talking or in any way, music, sound, poetry, reading, it's all sound because you're hearing it. So it's the music, isn't it? It's the most important thing in film.
Mm.
And the reason why film is so wonderful is because it's a moment frozen in time that will never change, and it's recorded in every element, in every sense, in all of the senses, and it's all there. So if you're able to get all of those senses right while making a film, then it's that you get to this sweet spot that is is like a surfer catching that perfect wave. And any filmmaker will say if they have had that moment, they try and get it again, and it's very very rare that happens.
Mhm.
The greatest filmmakers, yes, of course, they've done it maybe more than a few times, but it's a very rare thing. And that's what a filmmaker, a sound production, that's what they're always trying to do, is to get that sweet spot. And they're lucky if they've got it once, but I think that's just the industry. But as just a performer standing up in front of a group of people, certainly it's connecting emotionally in whatever way. Some people can have the greatest writing, that a person could get the book and read, and it's the most wonderful thing. But then that person gets up in front of an audience and they sound like shit. Their voice is their voice is flat. The way they're reading, there's no resonance, there's no movement, and the words, even though the writing is so beautiful, the words, they just sort of fall into the mist. So it's not it's not really so much about how good the writing is. It's about how you connect with the people or the audience, or how you connect with your space
Mhm.
by opening yourself up and emotionally letting out whatever it is. And that's why I love film so much, because it can do that, but in all these different ways that nothing else can. Mm.
It sounds like there's kind of a two-way, if not a conversation, there's an interaction between you and the audience that guides you. Um, it's not just you presenting something in front of an audience, but kind of being locked in a kind of dialogue, even if there are no words.
Yeah, well, I have this thing that has been a part of me for many, many years, and that is that, without going into all of the medical or technical reasons why, I have the ability to feel what people are feeling.
Mm.
So, but there's no such thing as people who can read minds or anything like that. That people might reference that, but that's just not the way it is. It's the first thing we did was movement, and from movement came the sounds and words and everything else. And we have brains that work through electrical impulses, electric impulses, and And so if someone has a strong sense to feel other people's emotions or feelings, that simply translates from a feeling into a word, and that's just like a musical instrument, you know. um, Everybody has different feelings, and we have a diction, right? We have a dictionary, we have a diction, and unless it's in a different language, it's pretty much the same diction. So therefore, if you feel something someone else is feeling, it's just translated into a diction we all share. It's not a weird thing. It's just of, unless you have a different dictionary, or you're following a different type of language, which there are, but in general, it's the words that we all say in the same way, and we understand the same way. I mean, I couldn't do that in a different language because I haven't lived in a different language other than the one that I know. French when I lived in Canada, and Italian when I was living with an Italian family for a few years. They'd, stick the words up wherever. But just in general, being around people and feeling what they're feeling, it just translates into the same language we all know.
Mm.
Um, and and so when you're in front of a group of people, it can be quite an intense experience for myself, because as I'm performing, um, and I'm not talking about dance here, I'm talking poetry or reading, expressing myself musically through sound. It can be quite intense if the audience themselves are, an intense group of people, um, because I feel that, and that comes through in my performance, because it's almost as if we become one group in that experience, and so it's a waterfall that flows through the whole group. Um, and I know myself, there's certain writers or certain people who I've been lucky enough to be in the audience when they've been performing or reading, and they also, I would imagine, quite similar in that way. And it's such a different experience you have, um, because when it's done, um, you have this understanding, and it's something that everyone else is understanding, that you've experienced something that you're likely never to experience again, because it was a collective experience. Everyone in that room was having that same feeling of intensity, and oh my gosh, this is something really special. Um, and it's like going to see a band or a musician play, and you get that feeling. And even that the musician or the band or whatever, they know that they're not going to be able to do that again in the same way. They know that's a special thing, just like the audience do. Um, and that's a beautiful thing. But that happens because the person on that stage or that person has opened up to the audience, and it's like breathing through each other. It's just this experience where you both know in the same moment that this is something, and you can't explain exactly why, but I would say it's a collective, it's a collective thing. It's the right group, the right thing. It's all happening in the right way, and it's really special when it does happen. It doesn't always happen, but when it does, it's quite something. And I'm sure that you yourself, Randy, have experienced that, and know exactly what I'm saying, being a musician yourself, and a writer, and a very good writer at that, I must say. So, mm,
Thank you. And I think that actually brings us to a logical closing place. We've been going for about 30 minutes. And so I just want to
oh,
thank you for sharing your thoughts, Maggie. And I think we got a taste of your art just from talking to you. So thank you very much for joining me.
thank you, Randy. It's wonderful.